Whitmore Estate, Cotswolds countryside, 4 p.m. Victoria Whitmore, 35, billionaire CEO of tech empire Whitmore Industries, returns home 3 hours early from her business trip to Tokyo. As she approaches her $15 million ultra-modern mansion, she hears laughter coming from the garden. She stops behind the perfectly manicured hedge, and what she sees leaves her completely speechless. Thomas Parker, 32, the caretaker she had hired just a month before, is playing water games in an inflatable pool with her son, Oliver, 3 years old. The child is laughing like he hadn't since Victoria's wife died 2 years ago. But what shocks her most is seeing Thomas treat Oliver as if he were his own son, with a love and tenderness that she, consumed by her billion-pound career, had no longer been able to give him. What she will discover about Thomas will change her life forever. Whitmore Estate stood majestically in the Cotswolds countryside like a jewel of contemporary architecture, all glass, steel, and minimalist lines that spoke of absolute power. Victoria Whitmore had built this $15 million mansion after Whitmore Industries became the third most powerful tech company in Europe, an empire controlling everything from artificial intelligence to electric vehicles, generating profits exceeding $3 billion annually. But behind those crystal walls reflecting success lay the deepest void a mother could imagine. Oliver was 3 years old, and in the last 2 years had almost forgotten what it meant to have a present mother. Since Emma, Victoria's wife, had died in a plane crash during a holiday in the Maldives, the child's life had transformed into a succession of nannies, housekeepers, and domestic staff who rotated through the mansion like work shifts. Victoria, devastated by grief and unable to face the reality of being left alone with a small child, had taken refuge in work like a drug. 14 hours a day at the office, constant travel between London, New York, Silicon Valley. Meetings, acquisitions, business strategies requiring her constant presence. Victoria told herself she was building a future for Oliver, that every million earned guaranteed him the best possible life. But the truth was, she didn't know how to be a mother without Emma beside her. Oliver was a child with blonde hair and blue eyes like his late mother's, but in recent months had become increasingly quiet and withdrawn. Nannies came and went because Victoria fired them for every small imperfection. The problem was that Victoria demanded professional perfection, but couldn't give genuine love. She returned home at 10 at night, when Oliver was already asleep, and left at 6 in the morning before he woke up. The last nanny, Mrs. Henderson, a 60-year-old woman with 30 years' experience, had left 2 weeks earlier with a phrase that hurt Victoria more than any business criticism. Her son needed a mother, not another employee following orders. It was then that the luxury domestic services agency proposed a different solution, a caretaker who could handle mansion maintenance while looking after Oliver during her absences. Thomas Parker was 32 with a CV that intrigued Victoria. Agricultural science graduate, he had worked for years as a gardener at the most exclusive estates around the Lake District, but also had experience as a children's entertainer at summer camps, and had raised his 2 younger brothers alone after their parents' death. The agency described him as a man of many talents, capable of transforming any green space into paradise, and winning any child's trust. When he presented himself for the interview, Victoria was struck by his naturalness. Tall, broad shoulders, hands that spoke of honest work, brown eyes that smiled even when his mouth was serious. He dressed simply, but with dignity, and when he spoke of his philosophy in caring for children, he used words Victoria hadn't heard in ages. Children need to feel loved for who they are, not for who they should become. She hired him that same evening, more from desperation than conviction. Oliver needed someone to care for him. The estate needed maintenance, and she needed to leave for Tokyo to close a $500 million deal with a Japanese multinational. She didn't know she was about to discover what it truly meant to love a child. The Tokyo trip was meant to last 4 days, but Victoria closed negotiations with Yamamoto Corporation in just 48 hours. The $500 million deal to supply her AI systems to the Asian market was signed a day early, yet for the first time in months, that satisfaction of duty accomplished didn't completely fulfill her. During the return flight, she found herself thinking about Oliver instead of contracts. She wondered what he was doing, whether Thomas had managed to follow the 3 pages of detailed instructions she had left. The plane landed at Heathrow at 3 in the afternoon in September. She had told Thomas she would return the following evening, wanting to check how he behaved when he thought he wasn't being observed. The black Jaguar slid silently toward Whitmore Estate. Before entering, she stopped, hearing laughter and water splashing from the garden, Oliver's voice more cheerful than she remembered in recent months. She walked around the mansion, hiding behind the perfectly trimmed boxwood hedge. What she saw completely paralyzed her. In the back garden, where museum-like order usually reigned, there was a green inflatable pool. Thomas, in work trousers and a wet t-shirt, was kneeling beside the pool with a water pump. Oliver, in swimming trunks with a yellow rubber duck, was laughing heartily as Thomas gently sprayed him with water. It wasn't the scene that shocked her, but the expression of pure joy on her son's face, which she hadn't seen since Emma died. Oliver splashed his little hands in the water, sprayed Thomas, who pretended to be attacked by the rubber duck, laughed with that spontaneous laughter only completely happy children can make. Thomas wasn't just supervising. He was playing with him, responding to his answers as if they were the most important thing in the world. When Oliver showed him how the duck swam, Thomas applauded with genuine enthusiasm. Victoria remained hidden for 20 minutes, watching her son interact with naturalness and trust never shown with professional nannies. The moment that struck her most was when Oliver, tired, approached Thomas and rested his little head on his wet shoulder. In that gesture of total trust, children reserve only for those who make them feel safe. She suddenly realized how much time she had lost, how much love she had denied her son. Thomas, in 1 month, had managed to bring joy back into the child's life simply by treating him as what he was, a child who needed to play, laugh, feel unconditionally loved. She moved away silently and re-entered through the front door. But in her head, 1,000 questions resonated. Who was Thomas Parker really? How had he conquered Oliver's heart? And what needed to change for her to become the mother her son deserved? That evening, after putting Oliver to bed with surprising ease, Victoria found herself alone with Thomas in the ultra-modern kitchen. The child had fallen asleep peacefully after telling about all the games played with Uncle Thomas, and for the first time in months, Victoria had seen him sleep smiling. Thomas was tidying the dishes with natural movements, as if this $100,000 kitchen had been his home forever. Victoria watched him, trying to understand who was the man who, in 1 month, had made her son happy. When she asked how he had gained Oliver's trust, Thomas explained that the child initially had been shy and wary. He barely spoke, seemed always waiting to be judged. Thomas had understood that Oliver didn't need perfect rules, but to feel free to be a child. He had started taking him to the garden, showing him how to plant seeds, explaining why plants needed water and sun. Oliver had begun asking questions, more each day. Then came water games, mud puppets, treasure hunts. Thomas didn't follow pedagogical programs. He followed the child's natural curiosity. As he spoke, Victoria understood this man possessed natural wisdom that can't be learned at university. Thomas told her about raising his younger brothers, Luke and Simon, after their parents died when he was 18. He had given up university to work and support them, learning to be both older brother and father figure. Now Luke was a doctor in Manchester, Simon an engineer in Birmingham, both married with children. Thomas was the beloved uncle, called for every birthday and important moment. But he had never had his own family, had always put others' well-being first. When Victoria asked why he had never married, Thomas smiled with melancholy. When you grow up too fast, when at 18 you must become responsible for a family, sometimes you forget to live for yourself. He had had relationships, but no woman had accepted that his priority was his brothers. That's why he had accepted Victoria's job. It wasn't just economic. It was the opportunity to care for a child again, feel useful, give love to someone who needed it. Thomas confessed that Oliver had spoken often about her, always with admiration, but also with heartbreaking sadness. The child knew Mummy worked hard, was very important, but simply wanted her to play with him, laugh at his jokes, listen when he had something to say. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. For the first time in 2 years, she truly reflected on what she had become. She had built an empire, conquered success, accumulated millions. But she had lost the most important thing, the relationship with her son. A man who owned nothing except an immense heart was teaching her what it meant to be truly rich. The following days changed something fundamental in Victoria. For the first time in 2 years, she began delegating responsibilities, saying no to non-essential meetings, returning home before 8. She wanted to observe the relationship between Thomas and Oliver, but above all, learn how to reconquer her son's heart. Thomas didn't lecture or judge her for past absences. With discretion and kindness, he began including her in daily activities with Oliver. He invited her to garden games, explained the small rituals he had established, showed her how to transform ordinary moments into extraordinary adventures. One afternoon, while Thomas taught Oliver to plant sunflower seeds, Victoria joined them, getting her hands dirty with earth for the first time. Oliver was ecstatic seeing his mummy kneeling in the mud beside him.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
Dirty and smiling as he hadn't seen her in years. During a late September storm, something decisive happened. Oliver, who usually feared lightning, ran to Thomas and Victoria watching the rain from the covered veranda. Thomas took him in his arms, telling him storms were sky giants having showers and lightning their camera flashes. Victoria watched Thomas transform Oliver's fear into curiosity and wonder. She understood he wasn't just entertaining a child. He was teaching him to see the world with different eyes, not to fear the unknown, to find beauty even in frightening things. That evening, Victoria asked Thomas to stay a bit longer. For the first time, she began talking about Emma, how they had met at university, how they had built the dream of a family together, how Emma's death had left her completely lost. Thomas listened without judging, without giving unrequested advice. When Victoria began crying, he simply offered a tissue and remained silent beside her. He didn't try to console with empty phrases. He remained present, and that presence was worth more than 1,000 words. Victoria understood. It was the first time in 2 years someone saw her not as the successful CEO, but as a mother who was afraid, felt inadequate, needed help rebuilding the relationship with her son. Thomas said something that stayed with her. Children don't need perfect parents, but real parents who make mistakes but try, who don't know everything but are willing to learn together. The next day, Victoria shocked Whitmore Industries' board of directors. She announced she would reduce working hours by 40%, delegate many operational responsibilities. Her absolute priority became time for Oliver. But the real revolution was yet to come. Victoria was understanding that what she felt for Thomas went beyond gratitude. She was falling in love with the man who was teaching her to love again. The English autumn painted the hills around Whitmore Estate in warm colors, and for the first time in 2 years, that house truly seemed a home rather than a success museum. Victoria had kept her promise. Now she spent afternoons with Oliver, participated in his games, helped with small nursery school tasks. But the real miracle was that Thomas had transformed her too, not just her son. He had taught her to slow down, find joy in small things, see the world through Oliver's eyes. Together they had built sandcastles in the garden, made biscuits messing up the entire kitchen, watched cartoons cuddled on the sofa. Victoria discovered sides of herself she thought buried forever under years of meetings and business strategies. But while learning to be a better mother, a feeling grew within her that both frightened and excited her. She watched Thomas play with Oliver and felt her heart accelerate. She listened to his laughter when the child did something funny and wanted to hear it forever. She observed his strong, gentle hands while he taught Oliver to build a birdhouse and imagined those same hands touching her. Thomas, for his part, began looking at Victoria with different eyes. No longer the unreachable, distant CEO, but the woman learning to be vulnerable, who got her hands dirty in the garden laughing like a child, who fell asleep on the sofa with Oliver in her arms after reading too many fairy tales. The turning point came one November evening when Oliver had a high fever. Victoria panicked, called 3 different doctors, wanted to take him to hospital for every degree of temperature. Thomas, with calm and confidence, reassured her, showed her how to reduce fever with natural methods, stayed awake all night with her to ensure the child was better. Around 4 in the morning, while Oliver finally slept peacefully, Victoria and Thomas found themselves sitting beside each other on the sitting room sofa, exhausted but relieved. Victoria rested her head on Thomas's shoulder without thinking, and he instinctively stroked her hair. They remained like that for a while, in silence, both feeling something was changing between them. When Victoria looked up and met Thomas's eyes, she understood he too was feeling what she felt. They kissed gently, with the tenderness of 2 people who had waited so long to find each other. It wasn't overwhelming passion, but something deeper. Recognition, completeness, the sensation of finally being home. In the following days, their relationship changed naturally. There was no longer Mrs. Whitmore and the caretaker, but Victoria, Thomas, and Oliver, a family forming without force, growing day by day in love and mutual understanding. Oliver was first to notice the change, and, with children's innocence, began calling Thomas almost Daddy. Victoria and Thomas looked at each other surprised the first time it happened, but then smiled, understanding the child had simply named what all 3 felt. They had become a family. But true love is always tested. One December morning, Victoria received a phone call that changed everything. Whitmore Industries had received an acquisition offer from an American multinational for $8 billion. It was the deal of a lifetime, the chance to become one of the world's richest women. But accepting meant moving to New York for at least 3 years, starting over, returning to the punishing work schedule of before. That evening, while Oliver slept, Victoria spoke with Thomas about the proposal. He listened silently, then simply said the decision was hers. Whatever she chose, Oliver and he would support her. But in Thomas's eyes, Victoria saw the fear of losing again everything he had learned to love. And she understood that true wealth isn't measured in billions, but in the ability to choose love above all else. The American proposal remained on the table for 3 weeks, during which Victoria faced the most important decision of her life. £8 billion, a figure that would make Whitmore Industries the largest European tech acquisition of the year and her one of the most powerful women in the business world. But every time she watched Oliver laugh with Thomas in Whitmore Estate's garden, every time she woke in the morning with Thomas beside her feeling complete for the first time in years, every time she saw in her son's eyes the serenity only a united family can give, she understood her life's true value wasn't measured in dollars. Whitmore Industries' board pressured her daily. Shareholders spoke of unrepeatable opportunity. Financial media speculated on her intentions. International headhunters called offering CEO positions at other American multinationals. The entire business world awaited her answer. Thomas never spoke about the matter, but Victoria saw worry in his eyes. One evening, while they prepared dinner together with Oliver helping by spreading flour everywhere, Thomas said something that went straight to her heart. He didn't want to be the reason she gave up her dreams. Victoria stopped, looked at him, and smiled, explaining that her dreams had changed. 2 years ago, her dream was dominating the business world. Today, her dream was dining every evening with them both, watching Oliver grow in a loving family, building something real together. The definitive answer came during the Christmas celebration they organized at Whitmore Estate. It was the first real celebration they had together, with the tree decorated by Oliver, the fireplace lit, gifts wrapped with more love than aesthetic perfection. Oliver, opening presents, found a fairy tale book Thomas had written, illustrated by hand with their adventures together. The child exploded with joy, hugged Thomas, calling him for the first time Daddy Thomas, without correction. And in that moment, Victoria understood no billion-pound contract could buy that happiness. On 28th of December, Victoria called a press conference that made news throughout the economic world. Before journalists, financial analysts, and international cameras, she announced that Whitmore Industries rejected the American offer and remained a British company, but above all announced a revolution in her business management. Victoria would maintain strategic control but delegate operational management, reducing her work commitment by 50%. Half the company profits would go to social projects for families, corporate nurseries, support for working parents. Whitmore Industries became the first major British company to officially put family at the center of its business philosophy. But she gave the biggest news 6 months later, when she married Thomas in an intimate ceremony in Whitmore Estate's garden, with Oliver as ring-bearer who told everyone he finally had a complete family. Scandal sheets spoke of the billionaire CEO marrying the gardener, but Victoria didn't care about comments. A year later, when Emma was born, named in honor of Victoria's first wife, Oliver declared himself the happiest big brother in the world. Thomas had opened his own therapeutic garden design company for children, becoming one of Europe's most sought-after experts. Victoria continued directing Whitmore Industries, but with hours allowing her to be present for every important family moment. One summer evening, while they dined in the garden Thomas had transformed into a small paradise, Oliver asked a question that made everyone smile. Whether she remembered when she was always sad and always worked. Victoria looked at Thomas, holding Emma in his arms. Then Oliver, with his face dirty from ice cream, smiling with that pure happiness of loved children, and replied that she remembered, but had discovered money can buy a beautiful house, but only love can transform it into a happy home. Thomas took her hand and whispered that sometimes love arrives dressed as a caretaker, when you least expect it. That night, as they put the children to bed and sat on the terrace watching stars above the Cotswolds, Victoria knew she had made the right choice. She had refused $8 billion, but gained something priceless, a real family, authentic love, the awareness that the heart's greatest wealth is what matters most. Whitmore Industries continued growing and prospering, but now it had a soul. And that house in the English countryside, once just a symbol of cold success, had become the place where love always won, where miracles were called family, and where every day proved that heart's choices are worth more than any fortune. If this story of love transforming everything has moved you, hit like and subscribe for more incredible stories of second chances. Tell me in the comments, would you ever give up $8 billion for love? Do you believe true success is measured in money or happiness? Don't miss the next video where you'll discover another extraordinary story that will make you believe in the power of true love.